October 10th, 2016, I started something called the Mr. Thank You Project, which was a personal social experiment to see what might happen in my life if I sent 5 handwritten thank you cards every single day for 365 consecutive days. So in total, that adds up to 1,825 letters of appreciation. Now, before I tell you what actually happened during that year, I want you to just consider for yourself, what might your life look like if every day you were committed to expressing love, gratitude, and appreciation with people that you care about? Now, people ask, like, where did this come from, this whole idea of gratitude? Well, of writing the thank you card. So by trade, I am a gratitude salesman. And specifically, what that looks like is I'm in the corporate gifting world. So when companies or organizations want to do gifts for their favorite clients or their employees, I come in and I consult and help them pick out what's best for them. And so I was having this struggle a couple of years ago because I felt I was so committed to helping other people express gratitude. But if you were to go and ask 100 people who know John Israel, what do you know about him? I don't think they might say some nice stuff, but I don't think the word grateful or appreciative of any of the words that they use to describe me. So I committed to write 5 thank you cards every day for a year to basically to see what happened and to see how it might affect my life. So I want to kind of fast forward right to day 3 of the experience because this one was a day that really resonated with me and stuck with me the entire year. And I was actually in Los Angeles at the time, taking a flight to Philadelphia for something called the Front Row Dads Retreat. The Front Row Dads are a community that I'm a part of entrepreneurial fathers, and we get together for these events 2 times a year to talk about how we can become better husbands to our wives and fathers to our children, all while running successful business. So I was boarding a plane, and one of the things with writing 5 thank you cards every day is you have to think like, well, who am I going to write them to today? And as I boarded this plane, I thought about the pilot. I fly often, and when I do, before takeoff, I always pray for safe travel. And to this day, 100% of the time, they've delivered on that promise. So that is a good thing. And as I was boarding the plane, I asked the flight attendant, "Oh, excuse me, can I get the names of the pilots?" Which is a super weird question to ask, by the way. So she looked at me kind of cryptically, like, "Why do you need to know that?" And I had to explain, "Oh, I'm going to write them a thank you card." But she was like, "Oh, that's great. Here you go. These are the names." So I sit down, and it was an interesting predicament because now I'm writing a thank you card to somebody I don't even know. Kind of an interesting thing. How do you appreciate and acknowledge somebody you've never actually met? So I just had to think about what must it be like to be a pilot. And essentially, this is a letter that I wrote. Dear pilot, this might be odd that you're receiving a thank you card from a passenger, but I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciate all that you do and all that you sacrifice for your job. I imagine that you've been wanting to be a pilot for a long time, maybe even since you were a little. I also realize that whenever I travel, that I am constantly missing my family. And that's just when I travel, but that's what you do every single week for your job. And I also realize that you deal with turbulence and snow and rain and all sorts of stuff only to have a shaky landing and have people complain about it. So if you never hear this from anyone else, I just want you to know thank you on behalf of myself and everybody on this plane. So I wrote 2 of these letters and I exited the plane and I handed them to the pilots. And then I jumped on my second leg of another trip to get to Philadelphia and I gave it to those 2 pilots as well. What was remarkable about this experience is that as I landed and within 24 hours of writing those notes, now these were particular letters that I had that had they were my personal business stationery. They had my name, my email, and my phone number on it. And within 24 hours, 3 out of the 4 pilots personally emailed or text messaged me to thank me for the card that they received. And one went on to say, John, you're right. We miss a lot of holidays. We miss a lot of important things. And you know what? In my 12 years of flying a plane, I've never received a thank you card from a passenger. And that really blew me away because I thought these are people who have such big, important jobs. They literally have thousands of people's lives at their fingertips every single day. And no one's taken the time to appreciate or thank them for who they are and what they do. So I thought if that's what it's like for them, what about everybody else? Everybody else in their work and their life and in their relationship. That there must be a need here. So I landed in Philadelphia and we go into having the first evening session of the Front Row Dads Retreat. And it was a great time. And there's about 40 of us entrepreneurs there. And at the end of the evening, we all decide to get together and go to a bar/restaurant for some fellowship, just to get to know each other more. A lot of us were there for the first time. And we went to this restaurant. We had no reservation. And it was really funny because we walk in and it was very quiet. There's only about 7 people sitting at the bar. And there's about 40 of us that all just showed up with no reservation. And everybody simultaneously stopped and turned and looked in our direction like we were a spectacle were. And then I just remember looking at the server who was sitting in the back of the room or standing. And she didn't have to say it, but we all got the message. Y'all just ruined my night. And so her name was Shantae, by the way. And Shantae, while we knew initially she was annoyed and frustrated, she wound up becoming a great server. She brought us to the back of the restaurant with our own private room. And she was the only server to really take care of 40 guys in one sitting. And so she got all of our drink orders correct, all of our food. We had a great time. And we had this really excellent evening. And we wound up closing them down until about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I remember thinking, okay, she's going to be my number five. She's my last card for the day. So I grabbed a piece of stationery and I wrote, "Dear Shantae, I just wanted to thank you for the wonderful evening. We are a group of entrepreneurial fathers here to learn how to become better husbands to our wives and fathers to our children. And tonight was really important because it was all about fellowship. And it was really important that we get to know each other and get to have conversations and enjoy ourselves. And you really led that. And we know that you could have been annoyed, you could have been frustrated, you could have given us crappy service and we totally would have understood, but you didn't. You chose great. And because of that, we had an amazing. So thank you on behalf of all of the Pro Dad. We put the letter in an envelope and I walk over to Shantae. She's sitting at a table cashing out all of her tips for the night. And I hand her the card. She accepts it awkwardly, as most strangers do when I hand them a thank you card. She took the card and I walked away. So as I was walking away to leave the restaurant, I realized I need to I need to go to the bathroom. So I turn around and I go to the restroom. And as I come out, I'm walking out of the restroom, and Shantae is standing there waiting for me with this like grin on her face, her head kind of cocked to the side. And she just looked at me and runs at me and gives me the biggest hug I've ever received and said, "That is the best tip I've ever been given." And she put me down. And we just looked at each other. It might have only been 2 or 3 seconds. And for that moment, we really saw each other. And it wasn't customer server, it was human being and human being. And it was in that moment that I realized the value of this Mr. Thank You Project thing was not about just writing a lot of thank you cards. It was actually acknowledging people and seeing people for who they are and their greatest strength rather than their weaknesses. And so that's what I got to do for an entire year. Every day, I would find different creative ways to write thank you cards and include them in my life. And one of the things that was so fascinating was learning how to appreciate people. I decided to research and study this idea of appreciation and gratitude. And what I learned about just the word appreciate, the root word is appreciare, which is Latin for to appraise or to set the value of a thing. So when you think if you're going to sell a home or you're going to sell a piece of jewelry, you want to get an appraisal before you so that you know what is its worth, what is its value? And you take it to an appraiser and they have a list of questions or things that they look at to determine what is the value of this article or this item or this thing. So, how do you apply that to a human being? And what I learned is it's just being curious. It's just asking questions, just getting to know people or even consider what might their life be like. And what I learned is that curiosity is the precursor to appreciation. But appreciation becomes the precursor to empathy. And with empathy, we have compassion. And from compassion, you can really literally connect with anybody. So that's what this year got to be. And one of the fascinating things that I learned about writing these thank you cards was what it felt like to bring gratitude to pain or to bring gratitude to uncomfortable experiences. And one of them was kind of funny, but I was my wife and I at the time were preparing to move. We were leaving from California to Texas, and we were packing every. You know what it's like when you've lived in the same place. You've got all this stuff you got to pack or get rid of. And I looked at my closet and I had all these clothes and suits that I hadn't worn for years, but I just didn't want to get rid of them. I just felt like, oh, if I get rid of these, whoever I give them to, they're not even going to appreciate it. They're not even going to know the value of what this thing is. And I thought, what if they did? So I grabbed some stationery and I picked out my top five articles of clothing. It was a couple of suits and a couple of jackets that I bought for a very specific reason, or I wore a lot and I just didn't wear anymore. And I wrote a note I remember there was one specific one I said, to whoever receives this jacket, I just want you to know this was my favorite jacket, even if my wife hated it. I, I wore this thing almost every day. I wore this all around the world when I traveled, and I hope this serves you as much as it served me. And it was so cool to have this experience that I was really frustrated and tight and not wanting to deal with this problem. So then I thought, how can I bring gratitude to this experience? And I thought of how I can just share this story with a complete stranger. And I just imagined for myself, what might it be like if I was going through the Goodwill store and I picked up this jacket and I found this thank you card from someone that I didn't even know and sharing the story of what this suit was or what this jacket was. I thought I would be so much more excited to purchase that item just because now I have a connection with this human being. That was such a cool experience. And I just wanted, the more and more I did this, the more I wanted other people to be involved in this Mr. Thank You project. And another time, about 8 months into the journey, I was boarding a plane from, at this time, I was going to Philadelphia, from Philadelphia to Las Vegas, Nevada. So it was a direct flight. So it was actually about a 5, 6 hour flight. And as I boarded the plane, I'd done this about 20 times now where I'd written thank you cards to the pilots and the flight attendants. But I thought, you know what? I get to do this, but not everyone else in the room has got on the plane has gotten a. I wonder if I can pull this off with the entire plane. So I grab 5 thank you cards, 3 for the flight attendants and 2 for the pilots, and I write a very simple note of appreciation acknowledging them for who they are in the cockpit. I put them inside of a folder, and on the top of the folder, I wrote a note that said, "Dear passenger, you are invited to participate in the Mr. Thank You Project, where we send love, gratitude, and appreciation to people who are undervalued in their work. Inside of this folder are thank you cards for the flight attendants and pilots of this plane. So we invite you to write a note of appreciation, or simply sign the card. If you don't want to participate, that's completely fine. Just pass them on to the next person. And the last person to receive it in the final row, final seat, just return it to the woman in the red dress, seat 32D." So that was actually my neighbor, and she didn't know I put that. But I did that because I wanted this to be completely anonymous. I didn't want anyone to know that I was the one who did this. So I put them in the folder, and I walked to the front of the plane, and there was these 3 elderly women just kind of sitting in the front. And it was really funny because they were sort of hard of hearing, and then there was a plane engine. So I was kind of like yelling the instructions at them. And I was like, "Inside here are thank you cards. Just fill them out and pass them down." And they were so cute. They're like, "Okay." And then I walked away. I'm like, "Did they even hear me?" I don't know. So I sit down and then I immediately start regretting my decision. Like, okay, this was way too weird. All right. You've done some interesting stuff with thank you cards. You might have crossed the border here. You're asking complete strangers to say thank you to complete strangers. And this is, someone's going to get uncomfortable. They're going to give them to the flight attendant. Flight attendant's going to call TSA. They're going to arrest me when we land. And there's no way I'm ever going to be able to fly in a plane again. Right. This is what's going on in my head because I don't see anything being passed around. I'm in the middle of the plane at this time. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is weird. And then 30 minutes later, I see the folder pass over someone's head. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's actually working. So then it goes on and on and on. And again, I'm in the middle of the plane and they wind up 2 hours later sitting on my tray table. The folder, there's notes and written all over cards. Oh, this is going to be amazing. But we're almost out of room. So I need to put some sticky notes in here. And I just put sticky notes and I just said, if you run out of room, write on these. And I just passed them down. And they kept going and going and going. And a couple hours later, we're getting pretty close to landing. And I think, okay, I got to check on where these cards are. So I go to the back of the plane, and as I walk to the back, I sit there in the second to last row, about to pull this off. So I go back to my seat, and almost immediately the pilot calls for landing. So no one can get up. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just wait until everyone gets off the plane, then I'll get the card. So we land. The woman in the red dress, she goes because she has no idea what she's supposed to wait for. So I'm just like, that's fine. I'll take care of this now. So I'm waiting. I'm like this, got this big grin on my face. I'm so excited. I'm like, oh, who's got my cards? Give them to me. Awesome. And I'm waiting, waiting, waiting. No one brings my cards. And I thought, where the hell are my thank you cards? So this was also a plane that was going from one destination to the next immediately. So there were some people who were still sitting in their seats, and there's actually a gentleman in the last row. So I walk over to him and I say, "Excuse me, sir, did you receive a folder that had thank you cards inside of it?" And he said, "Folder? Oh yeah, yeah. I handed that to the flight attendant when he walked by." And like I was hoping to do the whole big reveal thing. I was like, "No worries." Go to the flight attendant. I say, "Hey, did you get the brown folder from the guy in the last row?" No, like. He said he handed it to you when you were walking by. He's like, "Oh, well, I was picking up the trash. And so he just handed it to me. So I just threw it away. I was like, are you serious? Because why? What was in there? I said, that was a folder full of hand signed thank you cards from everybody on this plane. He says, are you serious? I say, where are they? He's like, they're down there. And he points to the trash truck that was about to drive away. And I was like, we have to get those cards. So he runs down the stairs, taps the trash man on the shoulder. He gets out. He explains what's going on. They immediately start pulling bags of trash out of the trash truck. They are ripping the bags open, reaching in through the trash, digging for my folder. And the flight attendant finds it, but it's soaking wet, drenched with soda, coffee, tea. You can imagine what this thing was covered in. And he just walks back up the stairs with this like gratitude coffin. Just, I'm so sorry. And I take the cards and I'm like, oh. I open the folder and the cards are in perfect condition. Not only are they in perfect condition, but they are hand signed completely. Every square centimeter is filled out with some letter, some note of appreciation from I'm going to guess probably about everybody on that plane. And there were sticky notes all over the place. And I was just blown away. And so I shove everything into their envelopes and I start handing them out to everyone. I was like, this is for you. This is for you. This is for you. I didn't have time for them to read it. I got to get off the plane. They had to fly away. And what was interesting is that most of this time in doing this project, it was this experience of what it was like for me to write the cards and also what it was like for me to see people's reactions. What was very different about this experience was that when I was walking out of the plane, there was a gentleman who tapped me on the shoulder and he said, excuse me, are you the guy that did the Mr. Thank You thing? I said, yeah, that was me. And he said, that was the coolest thing that I've ever done on a plane. He said, what was so cool about it is that my 8-year-old son was sitting next to me. And after we wrote on the cards, we got to have a conversation about kindness and about friendship and about what it means to take care of people no matter who they are or how we know them. So I just want to thank you for letting us participate in that project. And what I realized at that moment was that the lesson was more of a leadership lesson, which is that as soon as we give up the need to receive credit, community shows up. When we give other people the opportunity to shine and participate, we give them an opportunity to be a part of something really big. And the last story I'll share with you is when I was 2 months into the Mr. Thank You project. Unfortunately, I received a phone call from my best friend, Nick, to tell me that his father had passed away. And it was really unfortunate. It was very unexpected. And what made matters worse is that actually I had written Nick's dad a thank you card and it was sitting on my desk and I hadn't sent it yet. I actually had it for about 2 weeks and it was just sitting there. And I didn't send it because I was busy, because I was doing stuff. And while I'm really sad that that happened, I'm really grateful that it happened when it did because it gave me the perspective to see the urgency of what it means to tell people thank you, to appreciate people for who they are and their contributions. And I say that because at the end of our lives, what we really look at is one of the biggest regrets people have is what they didn't say to somebody or what they wish they would have told somebody before they were gone. And so when people ask, what's the biggest thing that you've got out of the Mr. Thank You project? I'm like, I got to say that for an entire year. I got to let everybody know what they mean to me. And that was the big gift. So if you choose to participate in the Mr. Thank You project or make gratitude a habit in your life and you're considering it, maybe you have some people that you're thinking, you should write a card to, do it now because you never know what's going to happen. Do it for them. At the same time, do it for you. Thank you very much.